Good afternoon, everyone. So welcome to our group discussion 5 for LAX2051. So I think we have turn to introduce ourselves as well. So I'm Bernie with matrix number 207374.
My name is Farajina binti Farid Bashir. My matrix number is 200554.
Hi everyone, I am Nohazika Inia binti Muhammad Saini. My matrix number is 201093.
Hello everyone, my name is Naira binti Al Ghaffar with matric number 209014.
All right, so hello everyone, it's happy to meet you all again in this discussion. So for today, we are going to discuss about the podcast topic that we have did with our team, and then what is the experience for the podcast planning as well. So as we know, right, the podcast actually, the objective for us to having this podcast is actually to let the youth in Malaysia have a stronger understanding about emerging issues in Malaysia and in the world, and also for us to kickstart our action as a future leader towards a better Malaysia and world. So we actually have divided into different groups, and we have 3 different scope of podcast topic, which are education and equality under COVID-19, challenges faced by youth today, and also the other topic is causes and effects of mental health issues. So I think we can take turn to actually discuss more about what actually we have experienced in the podcast. Yeah, so I think, would you mind, Farah, to actually take the first place to actually discuss what's the content that you get for the podcast? Yeah.
All right. I can explain. So for my team, we haven't actually done the podcast yet, but we done a discussion about our content points for the podcast. So the title of our podcast is COVID-19 and its effects on education and underprivileged students. So our podcast will be mainly talking about, of course, we're going to briefly introduce on COVID-19 and education. And I think we wanted to highlight the differences between the pre-COVID education and post-COVID education. We want to compare and see the differences, how COVID has changed the way that education is conducted for students. And then we also wanted to highlight about, during this pandemic, we wanted to highlight about the accessibility of education to students. So we're talking about how are they students who, let's say, kids who live in urban areas compared to kids who live in remote areas. How are they adapting to this online education? And then we also wanted to talk about what was it? About different social classes and how people, let's say in B40 and B40 and M40, right? M40, yes. How are they? How is it? How are they? Not how are they adapting? Is a better word to say it. How are they adapting with online classes because online education requires mobile devices that not each of them have, and even if they had that, internet connection issues is one of the most prominent thing that they are currently concerned about. So yeah, we wanted to highlight those kind of things in our podcast. We wanted to discuss this different perspective on it, and as well as because my group had participants from other countries. So we wanted to compare the perspective between how is it in our country, how is it in theirs, how are the online education is conducted there and here, and wanted to, share our experiences, and if we can be able to gain something out of theirs and they are able to gain something out of ours, that would be really nice exchange of, sharing information about education. So that's how we plan to conduct our podcast. And lastly, we wanted to open up to share on ways how we as individual or youth can actually help to aid in this online education issues as an individual, and what are the roles of NGOs as well as the government, what can be done to help these kids. So yes, for our podcast, that's what we plan to have a discussion on.
Wow, that's cool. And I think this topic is quite interesting to actually to be discussed, because I think the effects of COVID-19 is quite big, and that really create a new norms, especially for the education, since we're actually students. No matter it's like us or underprivileged students, there's actually quite a lot of things that we didn't realize before. And I think this podcast can be successfully raise some awareness to the public. Yeah, so that's cool. So would you mind to share more about your experience, like in two or three words, in this podcast? Yeah.
Yeah, so it was informative, right? Three words. I don't know if I'm doing this right.
All right, cool. So yeah, that's cool from hear from Farah sharing. Yeah, so first we can have Hazika. So what about the podcast topic that you have get for your team? And what is the
Right.
content about that you have planned?
For my team, we already finalized the podcast. We already get the recording done. Just left with the submission. So our podcast title is Understanding the Growing Gap of Older and Newer Generation. So I think this is a big issue because nowadays in Malaysia, we can see that there's such a huge gap between our younger and older generation. Like trying to understand each other better would be a great help. And so in our podcast, we discuss about the cancel culture, because nowadays like younger generation tend to like very into the cancel culture, like everything, even if it's you slightly make a mistake, then you got cancelled for it. I think the older generation doesn't really get that thing, so that's one of the gap that separating between our generation and the older generation. And next is the self expression, like miscommunication. So you can see that if, for example, like depression, we can see that younger people tend to be more open with the term depression, like they tend to be more understandable. But older generation, they don't really understand that thing, maybe because they're not being exposed properly to that. And even if you the issue like fake news, like how we get in Malaysia, like there's a lot of fake news about vaccine that make older people don't want to get vaccinated. And that's one of the issue in Malaysia that I think we need to educate the older generation more. Like even in the technology, they are far behind compared to the younger generation. And in this podcast, we also highlight that the new generation also has credibility. Like we can see in our government today, we tend to have like older people in the cabinet, and the younger generation are less likely to be picked as the leader. So in this podcast, we highlight that the younger generation also can be a leader. They also have credibility to lead our country. And in this podcast, we also share a few tips of how to understand each other better, how to understand the older generation for the younger one, and how to understand the younger generation for the older one. So we mentioned that how we need to understand each other and how we need to tolerate each other. Don't like sometimes our parents, my parents is also the boomer baby boom generation. So yeah, they tend to be like far behind in the technology and stuff. And they trust easily what's on the social media. In this podcast, we we highlight that we should not condemn them or fight with them, but educate them. So we would understand each other better and get the information, like get the gist of it. So I think that's how what my podcast trying to highlight.
I think this topic is really cool, and for me, it's quite new for me, because we actually have get sense about this problem, but we actually didn't get much understanding about this kind of thing. So I think like this topic is really good to be discussed. And yeah, as what you said, it's better if we can make this world better if we have this kind of correlations, good relationship, I can say, between older and newer generations, so that we can improve together, right? That's cool. So, how is the experience for you in this podcast planning and how you conduct this podcast? Yeah, how is it your experience for this?
I think I have a good experience with it because my teammates are very, very cooperative. We get it done like in a week. We managed to gather all the information and edit the video. We edit it together. So like we finished editing it in about like 2 hours or something, and we managed to discuss deeper into the topic and understand the topic better. So I think yeah, it's very informative and educational for us.
Wow, that's cool. Seems like you are having a very strong teamwork for your podcast team. Yeah, cool. So it's Ira turn. So what is the content or the podcast topic that you get for your team, Ira?
So our team mainly focus on effect of mental health issue, and we're focusing on the taboo in mental health issue itself and the effect of it. So first we just talk about like why mental health issue is taboo in the first place, like concerning depression, why we as young people, when we get depressed, we can't really say to other people because it's taboo in the first place. And we also discuss about the current issue concerning mental health issue, especially during the pandemic, like how the pandemic affect those people with mental health issue, and also the causes of it, and of course effect. And last but not least, we talk a bit about how to prevent the stigma of the mental health issue. And I think we all know that like things like depression, anxiety, loneliness, hopelessness, sometimes people can experience it, but we've seen it in media, TikTok, Instagram. But then these things not actually being discussed over because something like taboo in the first place. And especially the generation that does not come with us, like older generation, they will tend to like blame us, like are you like just want to get attention for this? So these these people affected, they don't want to share it with others. So we also like give some statistic view, like how 2018 and 2020 really different. Like 2018 we don't have the pandemic yet, and 2020 there's like very very big difference statistic percentage of like we compare with like it's like calling. We talk about befrienders is something like it's something like a support line that you call when you want to commit suicide and something. So the rate is much much higher in 2020, and this is we concluded this is because of the pandemic. And also we talk about the causes of it, like we like it's very common, but and the causes of it is because the stigma and prejudice and discrimination, how society treat them, and they don't really treat affected people with patience and kindness, while the affected people encounter hatred and contempt, and society they refuse, and they don't want to communicate with them. So we also touched about how like do mental health run in the family, and also ways to overcome. Like we have, first of all, we have to educate the generation, like this is a very serious issue, and you cannot just take this lightly. And yeah, that's mainly it, I think.
It's cool. Actually, quite pay attention to this kind of issue as well, because this is a big concern, especially for young people. Yeah. So, is it your experience going well? How is the experience for this podcast? Yeah.
Yeah, I say it's eye-opening because in our podcast each of members share about their stories. Like one of the members share about the suicide case in like one of the university, I think it's UPM. Also UPM have one student that commits suicide. And also like and when I heard that story, I was like, wow, I never heard of that. So it's very eye-opening for me.
Yes, I think that's really cool because we can, through this podcast, then we can go in depth to actually understand more and then raise some concerns for ourselves as well. And we can be the one to actually bring this topic to the public as well. So I think we actually have quite a good experience for this podcast. So I think that's all for our discussion today. We come to the end, and I think that's it. Thank you, everyone. So meet you in another discussions. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.